Zeroing your rifle is super important. If you want to be able to hit something, you have to have a well or perfectly zeroed rifle, or as close to perfect as you can possibly get. So, what is zeroing? How do you zero? What do you need to zero? And ultimately, like, what is the complete and total way to zero your rifle? So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so what is zeroing? Zeroing is setting your rifle and impacting a target. And from the point that you're at to where your target is, that bullet does not fly straight. And as it travels between where you are shooting to different distances, you have to make sure that your barrel, and your optic are all in unison so that where you aim, you know where that bullet is going to impact. The initial zero, there's lots of different zero ranges, but really for the peanut butter and jelly sandwich here, to get it down as basic as we possibly can, you want the point of aim and the point of impact at a pre-described distance to be perfect. So then you can make calculations about how that bullet is going to impact at different distances moving forward. The things that we're going to need, obviously, the rifle. We're going to need the ammo. We're going to need the optic, or the aiming tool. You're going to need a way to make adjustments on that aiming tool and make sure that the tools that you have are specific to the thing that you're using to aim. Every optic manufacturer has different types of tools to make those adjustments, which is kind of infuriating. You need a range, you need targets that enable and facilitate you being able to zero. You need eyes and ears. You need, now when you start getting into greater distances and making greater adjustments, you're gonna have to know your muzzle velocity. You're gonna need a way to measure where you are to the distance to your target, whether that's a tape measure, if the range is pre-described. Now, when you get to a range and you see that 25, 50, 100, is that in yards or is that in meters? You have to make sure that you know the distance that you're zeroing. So I have good laser rangefinders. You also want to be shooting from a very stable position. I'm going to be shooting off of a backpack from a pad that's totally prone. I'm going to be using a shooter glove. I'm going to be using the Sheepdog Response little sandbag to give us a stable position. I'm going to be putting a bunch of data into a ballistic app that connects to my laser rangefinder. So when I'm zeroing a target at different distances, it's going to tell me what my holdover is. Some of the data that you're going to need is the muzzle velocity, which you'll get from your chrono. You're going to need the bullet coefficient, you need the bullet grade, you're going to need the bullet diameter, the bullet length, you're going to need to know the twist rate, you're going to need to know from the center of your optic to the center of your barrel, that is how high the sight height is off of the center of the barrel. Depending on the manufacturer, you can find some of the data on the box. So here you can see the G1, G7 ballistic coefficient, and then it gives you some examples of muzzle velocity and energy at different distances. This is useful, and yes, you can absolutely go off some of this. Specific to your rifle, the twist rate and the length of the barrel is going to impact the muzzle velocity for your bullet out of your rifle, which is why you have to have a chrono. There's lots of different brands out there. It's getting really, really, really easy now, man. I used to have to set up like this little cage, and I'd have to shoot the bullet through the cage to measure the speed. Then I was like attaching things to the end of my barrel, and now I literally just like open up this tripod, throw this thing down, and this tells me exactly my velocity for that bullet. All right, let's just kind of get into it then, yeah? First thing you have to do is get on paper. That sounds easier than what it is sometimes. When you first put on a scope onto your rifle, you want to make sure before you go out and zero that everything's tight like a tiger. You want to make sure all of your bolts and all of your screws are nice and tight before you spend a bunch of time trying to get a perfect zero. And unbeknownst to you, or you didn't forget to use the right poundage and how tight that is supposed to be. Each of these screws and these big bolts here have different poundages, and you need to know what that is for your rifle and for your optic. You can mess up your scope if you make it too tight. So know those things. Now, getting on paper, I like to, after I mount the optic, I also set the focal plane and adjustments of the focus. So when I get behind my glass, it's bright and crystal clear. So the reticle, which is like the crosshairs, or if you're shooting like an H58 or H59, or the tactical milling reticle, the thing that you're aiming inside of the optic, there's a way to adjust how that is to your eyes. It's not just the focus for how far a target is, it's how you see the reticle in the lens, and that is what you do. And the way that I do it is I lay the rifle down, I put it up against a very bright surface, like this white sign, for example, or that white building that's in the sun. And then I take my eye off the scope and I put it back on the scope, and I need to have, I'm gonna make consistent adjustments until when I bring my eye back on, it's bright, clear, and crisp the moment that I bring my eye on. It's not, my eye's not having to make any micro adjustments to get it into focus. Super important to make sure that you do it the right way, getting it in focus the first time. Then I pull the bolt and I bore sight it. So I set the rifle and I aim at a specific thing. There's lasers that you can use where I can put a laser down the bore, do like tiny twists and make adjustments. And all of this is gonna save time and money when you get onto the range, where every one of these bullets is $4. If I go down and I'm zipping rounds, not even on paper, and it's like, you know, it takes me 10 rounds to get on paper, that just cost me 40 bucks. And I don't like to spend money unnecessarily when I can just use a little bit of time to make sure that I get on paper. Sometimes you have to move the target up close after you bore sight that first time. Maybe start at 25, make sure you're on paper. Then you can move your target out to 100 or whatever your zero range is and set your zero. The different types of zero. How are you using your weapon? If you are a deer hunter and you are shooting from a tree stand or a blind down onto a feeder and it's 100 yards, you should have a 100-yard zero. If you are going to be, you know, a packing in public land hunter shooting rifle on, you know, a hard to find, maybe an opportunity of a lifetime when you finally win the lottery and you get selected to go and hunt an elk in Colorado or Utah, maybe you want to make sure that you have everything you need in a perfectly zeroed rifle that has that you have confidence in its in your zero, so that you can shoot out as far as your fundamentals will allow. Now we know what we need. We know the reason behind zeroing. After we get on paper, then we want to make the perfect adjustments to have good groups where our point of aim and our point of impact is perfect, which is where we're gonna go next. After you're mounted your scope, you wanna make sure that the tightness is the right pressure. Lots of different brands make ways to do that. With the torque wrench, most optics are mounted with this 1/2 inch. So you can just throw this on top there, make sure that you have the right pressure, and then how tight you tighten your rings also have a preset tightness to them. So we got all that set. We have our target down at exactly 100 meters. And I have my chrono set up. We laser bore zeroed, so we should be pretty close to being right on paper. Now we just need to start confirming what our zero looks like at 100 meters. So here we go. When you're zeroing, you want to be in the most stable position you can possibly be. This really has to do with the performance of the rifle and the bullet. Of course, like the shooter is part of the total system, but as you're trying to get the data, you want to be Like, this isn't the time to show how fancy you can shoot standing offhand. This is for you to build a really stable shooting position. As I'm shooting with a glove and I'm shooting from sandbags on top of my bag, yeah, I'm shooting super stable, so I can be really confident in my zero. I also want to dry fire. I want to make sure that my fundamentals of marksmanship, shooting from what my zero position is, where I'm going to be shooting off of a bench or I'm going to be shooting prone, is as stable as I can possibly be. All right, first shot, muzzle velocity in feet per second is 2965.7. We'll shoot a 3-round group and get the tightest little group that we can and make our initial adjustment off of that. All right, so I shot a total of 4 rounds. One was to get my cold bore muzzle velocity. My cold bore muzzle velocity is going to be different than after the barrel is warmed up, the chamber is warmed up. Then the next 3 rounds are going to be way more consistent in overall velocity. After I saw my impact, so my cold bore shot, not that it's a throwaway shot, you really need to know what your cold bore shot is, and I mark that in my dope book. So my data of prior engagements, that first shot, the cold bore shot, is what it's going to be like when you go hunting. So I need to know what the difference of my cold bore shot in comparison to all follow-on shots after that. I was having almost 0 muzzle velocity difference in feet per second, which is really what you want. I mean, it was like 1 foot per second different, 29.67, 29.65, 29.66, which is perfect. That means that the weapon is shooting very consistently, and you want it to be very repeatable when it's coming to precision rifle. My impacts were 1 inch to the right from the point that I was aiming to the point that it was impacting. So when you come over here and you look at every single optic is going to have a different unit of measurement. It might be minutes of angle. And what this is telling us is that 1 click is 0.01 mils at 100 meters. For my impacts to be at point of aim of point of impact, I can now just do a little bit of math. So if this was 1 click is a 1/4 minute of angle, I'm going to make 4 clicks to make 1 minute of angle adjustment for my impacts to move into where I'm aiming by that 1 inch that they're off. Here I'm aiming. Here is my point of impact. I need to measure the distance between these two. It's 1 inch. I can see it because I have a 1 inch pasty, and it's just on the outside from the middle of my pasty to a full pasty distance on the outside, so it's 1 inch. For my MRAD clicks, 0.01, or whatever your unit of measurement is, I'm going to make the adjustment towards the direction on the paper to move the targets, to move the impacts. So right now the bullets are impacting on the right. I want to move them to the left. So this says arrow pointing towards the right. I'm going to go the opposite direction because I want those to go to the left. Boom. My elevation was perfect. Now we're going to throw another round. After I confirm my zero, then I tighten everything back up. I put my scope rings, I put my scope caps back on and tighten everything down. Then I confirm my zero. So we're gonna make sure that we got good hits here. So I was 1 inch to the right. I made my adjustments and I was like a 1/4 inch to the left. So I went back a 1/4 the distance. All right. So we finished our zero, where now our point of impact is perfect with our point of aim. I have my muzzle velocity. I have all the data on the bullet. I made all of my adjustments. Everything's tight. And now I moved my scope caps. Now I'm tightening everything back where everything's zeroed out. So now I can dial on adjustments in vertical adjustment. I don't ever dial on adjustments on my horizontal or my windage. So after I've made my zero, I then cover all of those adjustments with the scope cap. Now I know that I don't need to ever make that adjustment. Big fat fingers here. There we go. All right, that's tight. This is zeroed out. This is all the way with my backstop back at zero. So when I come back, boom, stops at zero. And make sure my illuminated reticle is off, save my battery. Now I have a zeroed rifle. I'm gonna plug all of the data that I got from this shooting session into my ballistic app. All right, and then I'm gonna connect this to my laser rangefinder. So then when I use my laser rangefinder, all of the data from my app is in my laser rangefinder. So I zero it, it tells me my adjustment, and I'm able to either dial it on or aim. That's a video for another day, but it's a really good feeling having a well zeroed rifle, which is what we got now.